This tent, you know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. I'm Kev, your host as always, and you are listening or watching the Liverpool at Home preview podcast. Joining me for this episode, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. James, how are you doing, mate?
Yep, I'm feeling good.
You might not be in half an hour's time.
It's going to be a daunting one, isn't it? But that's what we wanted to be here for.
Absolutely. Okay, coming up on this episode of the podcast then, typical preview fare. We will look at our opponents, Liverpool. There's a lot to look at, to be fair. We will go through, we'll pick out 3 of their danger men. That's 3 of 11, to be fair. But we'll pick out 3 of them that might cause us the most problems.
Are we doing a lucky dip?
Yeah, it's literally the ones that we can say, I think. But we'll also look at the Luton Town team. We'll look at areas where we can get at this Liverpool team, which may not take as long as it does in other episodes of the podcast. And then, of course, we'll finish, as we always do, with our score predictions. So we'll also like your score predictions. So listen to the podcast and make sure you give us your score predictions at the end. And we will give kudos to anyone who gets it right, particularly if it's a Luton winning one, in the next episode of the podcast. James, Liverpool, home. I mean, like you just said when I introduced you, when we were messing around in the conference, it was days like these that were an absolute dream that's now become a reality, and it's everything that we're here for.
Yeah, I mean, these are the big ones. I mean, Villa at last weekend was one of the iconic grounds to go to, isn't it? But when you are thinking about hosting the big boys, then these are one of the 3 or 4 that are the truly big teams in this country, and yeah, it's one you sort of look out for, isn't it? Them coming here. It has happened before in recent memory, really, in club saving almost the memory, really. And yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to it, but also not at the same time. Is that allowed to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. It's allowed to happen because ultimately, it's another one of these games that's not going to define our season, but it's also one of those games that, if you get something from, could mean so much more than whatever it is that you get from it. James is right to actually bring up the club saving part of this, because 15 years ago, Luton went into an FA Cup tie with Nottingham Forest that if they hadn't won that tie to set up the tie with Liverpool in the 3rd round, well, we may not be here doing this podcast, because there may not be a Luton Town to talk about. It really was that bleak, and that cup tie against Liverpool kept enough coffers in, enough money in the coffers to keep us going long enough for 2020 to buy us out, and obviously the rest, as they say, is history. It's a fixture that I've seen a few times. I'm of a generation that I caught this fixture in the top flight before Luton were relegated from it. It was a fixture that Liverpool hated coming here when we had the plastic pitch. We were very successful. There are so many iconic sort of fixtures between the two of us. There was the Mike Newell hat-trick in the FA Cup, which I think was 85. My dad will be watching this and will be cursing or agreeing with me. Hopefully he's doing the latter. He always goes on about the day at Anfield where we used 3 different goalkeepers and drew 3-3. That was another one. Me, more recently, the 5-3 game, when we were in the Championship, and they were European champions at the time, weren't they? And that was the best game of football I've ever seen. Luton were absolutely magnificent that night, and I think we'd have beaten every other team in the country. We just picked the one team that were just that little bit too good. But if Scott Carson had been sent off, that would have been oh so different. And then, of course, we went to Anfield the last time these two sides met, and nobody gave a shit that we lost 5-0. It was because the club was in 2020's hands that night. So, yeah, this is a fixture that's got plenty of history to it, and it's not all bad from Luton's point of view.
Yeah, like you, I'm old enough to remember the 80s and the early 90s. I think Liverpool was one of the first games I ever went to at Kenilworth Road, I'm pretty sure. My memory's hazy at the best of times, but I want to say maybe Ronnie Rosenthal at the bar. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
You remember that one?
When they'd have been sponsored by Candy back in them days, weren't they?
That's the one. Yeah.
Grey shirt.
Yeah. I don't know. God knows, my memory is that bad. But that's sort of one of the flashes of things that I can remember from back then. But no, the ones I remember were those two FA Cup games, and certainly the one up at Anfield that, you know, it was the best 5-0 drubbing of all time, wasn't it, really? But yeah, I remember being up there for that one. Fantastic day, really, for what it means for the club and everything that's happened since, really. And the 15-year journey that's happened since then has been unbelievable, isn't it? One of the greatest fairy tales in football. And while Luton were doing that, Liverpool have, you know, since won their first title in 30 years, then won everything that you can possibly win. They're sort of back on, not necessarily the top perch at the moment, but they're back amongst it. So it's going to be, you know, regardless of where they were, even if they were in the 90s Spice Boy days when they weren't really pulling up trees, they still would have been one of the biggest draws because of the history and who they are. So yeah, it's really one to look forward to until we dissect we're going to be coming up against, because bloody hell, they're good, aren't they?
Well, let's do that then. Let's get it out of the way, because everyone knows that it's coming, and everyone knows that, well, like I said right at the start, we could have picked 11 threats, because even the goalkeeper scored in this bloody league before, hasn't he? It's that daunting that we're coming up against. But hopefully Liverpool fans agree with the three that we've picked out. It's no disrespect to the other 7. They're all good players in their own right, but these 3 are the ones that are on the most form, and you have to start. Well, there's only one place to start, isn't it? I mean, I really wish the Saudis had upped their dough and got rid of Salah, because it would have made the afternoon just slightly easier, but they didn't. And Mohamed Salah, when we talk about playing in this league and we talk about going up against world-class, elite, iconic footballers, which we've done 2 or 3 times this season, you know, against Chelsea. Tottenham had 1 or 2 as well. This guy is probably, along with Erling Haaland, the standout marquee footballer in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think even more than that. I think history will have him down as one of the best players in the Premier League of all time. I think he's really got to be in that conversation for the amount of goals he scored. And that one season where he scored like 50 odd for Liverpool, that's an incredible amount. And considering he's not even a bloody striker, it's some going. And he's bang on form again this season, isn't he? I mean, he's been involved in 32 goals in his last 28 Premier League games, which is, wow, that is some going. That's just him on his own. I mean, you put that against the entire Luton Town team statistics. I mean, I know we're talking about 2 different ends of the football, the Premier League spectrum at least, but it's pretty impressive. And he's got 20 goals and 12 assists so far
in those 28 games. Yeah, I mean, obviously that goes into last season, but
Yes.
that's pretty much the whole of 2023, really. So you're looking at this calendar year, pretty much 32 goals he's been involved in. Goal involvements, they call it these days, don't they? 20 goals, 12 assists. Yes, some of those goals are penalties, but they all add up. And yeah, I mean, good luck, Alfie. This is a tough assignment by anyone's equations, really. I mean, this guy scores against better sides than Luton. He scored in Champions League finals. He scored in the biggest games. He scored in World Cups. He scored in Africa Cup of Nations. He is pretty much in the modern day as good as it gets.
Yeah, and he can score them all as well. He can score if you give him as much space as you give John McGinn. He's scoring that all day, except top bins. If you want to go toe to toe with him, he can jink it past you. He's quick, he's real quick, and he can go past you that way. And I've seen, even if you manage to contain him in any way like that, so he can't personally do the damage in terms of scoring the goals, he seems to be forming a great partnership with, again, I mean, not like he formed a great partnership with Firmino and Mane, but now he seems to be forming another one with Nunez. And they highlighted it on Match of the Day recently, didn't they, with Szoboszlai. So different kind of threat. And I think that up there they're calling it Liverpool 2.0 after the rebuild job that's happened and the midfielder players that have come in, who all seem to have come in and been instantly fantastic. I suppose you'd expect that from the amount of money they're paying for it, but it doesn't always work out, does it? Manchester United and
Chelsea.
It's everywhere you look, they are an elite team. They're a bit dangerous.
Yeah, that's one side of the that's one side of the front three. Luis Diaz would have been the other side of the front three. We should just take note here, actually. We hope that everything that's going on with him and his parents works out in the way that it should do, because it's a catastrophic and tragic situation that's going on there, and we do not wish that on absolutely anybody. So it looks like that situation is going to mean that he's not involved in this game, which from a neutral sort of wanting to watch good footballers point of view is a shame, and of course from a humanitarian point of view is a shame. So yes, we send all of our best wishes to Luis Diaz and hope that all works out with his family, and that we'll move forward in positive light. It will probably be Diogo Jota, though. I mean, it's just replacing one bloody good footballer with another one. Diogo Jota, who will probably play down that left-hand side of the Liverpool attack. He's a bit slower than Salah. He's only got 11 in his last 13 starts in all competitions for Liverpool. I mean, jeepers creepers.
Yeah, boo-hoo.
Yeah, what are you doing, man? A bit slow off the mark. Big money signing from Wolves. And I remember people thinking at the time, well, why have they signed him? Because I think it was around the time that they were meant to be signing in Timo Werner from Leipzig. Well, that worked out well, didn't it? Because one was an absolute busted flush, and they turned out to get a bit of a gem from Wolves in Jota. Whenever and wherever he plays, and it's amazing that this bloke's not guaranteed a start, given what he is, but whenever and wherever I see him play, he always does the business, and I guess that's exactly what you want from a player, isn't it? He's a goal scorer, he's a goal provider, he's got pace, he's got trickery, and our right-back situation has been an ongoing one for a while, and it's going to be nightmares for whoever is down that side. Yeah,
it really is, and any mistake seems to have got punished really ruthlessly in the Premier League so far, apart from Everton. Cheers, Everton. And he is one of those players that will do that for you, because I think he's got a lot more to his game, but he seems to me that he's the best poacher they've got. And if anything is going wrong, is there any sniff of anything, he'll be in there. And that, it is a worry for the amount of soft goals that Luton obviously conceded against Aston Villa at the weekend, and okay, throughout this first period in the Premier League. Really, it's been a bit of an issue. I mean, if you do that against this team, it could be a bloody cricket score. So hopefully this week is focused on on those things. But it's one thing saying you're going to try and tighten up and stop a team like Liverpool, but many have found doing it is a completely different matter. Yep, they have indeed. Those two that we've just referenced probably don't need someone to set the goals up for them. They're quite capable of doing that themselves. But if they do need someone to set the goals up for them, then former Leipzig midfielder and Hungary captain Dominik Szoboszlai, I do apologise if I've absolutely butchered his name, is probably the man. Usually foreign players that come into the Premier League need 6 months or whatever to get up to the speed of it and adjust and everything. I mean, they must have signed this bloke in January and not told anyone, because he's just hit the ground running. Every time I see them play, he's doing something. So it's either bursting into the box and having a shot, like you said, linking up with Salah, with Nunez. I mean, I've seen a fair bit of this guy, both when he was in the Bundesliga and playing for Hungary when I've followed international football. He looks the real deal as well, to be fair. And I mean, he come in at a time where Liverpool lost Milner and Henderson and Fabinho, and no disrespect, but they've got a bit of an upgrade with this fella. He does look really, really good. Yeah, box to box, isn't he? I think I've on the occasions that I've looked, I think even some murmurings from up there that he's the next sort of Steven Gerrard filling that. I was big boots to fill, obviously, and it's going to take more than one season. But he started like an absolute rocket, and he's got the most chances created in the Premier League. I think it was certainly 21 before the weekend, and then he got his first assist. So he's up there for chances created, and he seems to be able to do absolutely everything. I think, where Luton pick up players, like we've talked about Chio Ogbenny this season, about what an absolute bargain it is. That's the Liverpool bargain at the very other end of the spectrum, where they've spent an absolute fortune that Luton couldn't afford. But why no one else was looking at him, I haven't got the foggiest at the moment.
No, he's another threat, and Marv's going to have to be right on his game to see that challenge off. That is for sure. Again, I reiterate what I said right at the start. That's no disrespect to the likes of Alexis McAllister, to Trent Alexander-Arnold, to Virgil van Dijk, to Darwin Núñez, and to anyone else that plays. But they're the three that we think are the main threats in a game where there are plenty. But this isn't a Liverpool podcast.
Although, before we get to that, I suppose now that you've mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold, considering what we just saw at Villa Park, where they were bloody ruthless with their long passing and picking out that's what he can do as a bit of a damage is sort of an understatement, because he'll ruthlessly punish any of those sorts of slip-ups. So, I know we've only picked out 3, but I guess even from the back, they're dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, if we went through the whole team, we'd be here for an hour and a half, and none of us have got an hour and a half to wax lyrical about Liverpool. That is for sure. We could do, though. But this is a Luton podcast. Luton are at home in this game, so we're not just going to sit there and roll over and let Liverpool beat us. There will be a plan. Obviously, there'll be as much of a plan to stop Liverpool as there is to try and get after Liverpool. Before we come on to what we can do to hurt Liverpool, and there are areas where they can be exploited, team selection. First of all, are you expecting that back 5 to remain, or do you think we go back to a back 4 for this one?
Just take it back 6, 7, 8, maybe.
Can we have 15?
Yeah, exactly. It's a dilemma, isn't it? Because you're at home and you want to try and be as positive as you can. It's like what we talked about in the Aston Villa episode, the review episode, where you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. I'd probably go 5 just because of the amount of threats they have. It's strange, isn't it? I almost don't want to say the words of, just got to keep it tight and get that low block working and frustrate them and stuff, because it's not really what Luton have been about for a good, since we started this podcast, actually, in 2017, well, in the conference days as well, John Steele conference days. You sort of want to go after teams, and that's what we've been used to, but this is a different kettle of fish, and don't think you can. I think it's, try and get as many bodies in there as possible, and almost play it like an away game.
Yeah, we're recording this episode of the podcast before Rob's pre-match press conference, and so we're kind of preempting everything, really. But I suspect the word pragmatic is going to come up quite a few times between now and the kickoff on Sunday, because that's what Luton have to be. There's no reward for being gung-ho and smart in this game. There's a reward for being organised, well-drilled, and trying to nick something and hoping that it's good enough to do that. Very much like in the cup game. Very much, funnily enough, like in 2008, where we hung tough. And then John Arnorita said, we'll take you back to Anfield, and popped it in the bottom corner. If he wants to pop up at left-back as Andy Robertson's injured, that would be a nice surprise for us, it must be said. In the forward areas then, well, first of all, actually, before we finish on the defence, we understand the possibility that Amari Bell could be fit. Straight back in?
Yeah, I think so. He's it depends what formation you suppose you're going to play. But if it was a 5, obviously they'd play the 3 centre backs, wouldn't they? And on the left side of that, he's the best defender you've got in that position at the moment available.
So you'd go Bell, Lockyer, and you've got Osho or Mengi on the right hand side.
Oh man, that is a puzzler. I'd probably go Mengi just because he's had more experience this season. That's it. That's the only reason. It's not that. No, nothing against Gabe. We love Gabe Osho. Absolutely fantastic player, but he's still getting up to speed, obviously. And having just played Villa, with the great respect to them, playing Liverpool is like Spinal Tap 11, isn't it?
It really is. I like what I've seen from Mengi. Everyone who's listened to this podcast since Reece Burke joined this club will know I am the chief of the Reece Burke fan club. But I think Mengi could be right up alongside him, actually. I think he's that good. And I think when he settles in and we stop having to jiggery-pokery with the defenders and he gets that settled run, I think he will look a real class act. And he's from Man United, and it's ingrained in your blood to hate Liverpool if you're from Man United, so he'll be right up for the game as well, won't he? So I would probably just go Mengi ahead of Osho. But, I don't think there's a wrong one for that one. If it's Osho ahead of Mengi, then that's fine. Osho's that good. No problem with that. So the front five then, obviously at Aston Villa, it was Barkley, it was Nakamba, it was Chio, Brown and Morris. The most vulnerable one of that five would be Brown, possibly. It's not really worked for him yet. That's not to say that he hasn't done good or tried hard or everything else. It's just not clicking for him at the minute. So maybe Elijah for him, possibly.
It's a good shout. In the same way that we were talking about Ross Barkley having to come in after the cameo he put in, then Adebayo has looked. But he's looked great off the bench, and maybe not so much when he started. But he is fired up. He's hungry, and the thing he's got over Brown is that he's hit the net twice.
And he's got that kind of unpredictable trickery that I'm not sure he always knows what's going to happen. So if he doesn't, the Liverpool defenders certainly, it's going to be few and far between the sort of opportunities that we get to exploit them. And Eli might just have that bit of magic like at Wembley just to open a door for someone or something like that, which maybe Brown is a little bit more conventional. Is that a fair word? Traditional. Mm-hmm. That's slightly easier to defend against, perhaps?
Potentially. Maybe there's another factor in it, I think, also that and we've got to play on this as much as possible, is the crowd factor. Obviously, I think the crowd would be massively up for this because it's Liverpool.
We should just point out 4:30 p.m. kickoff for this game on Sunday, live on Sky Sports. If you haven't got a ticket, already sold out, obviously. 4:30, not 2 o'clock like at Aston Villa, 4:30 p.m. kickoff. So it'll be dark, floodlights will be on. Mm-hmm. It's true, Luton Town, Kenilworth Road, magical time. This could be the first real get stuck into them crowd wise sort of like we all know that it can be.
Yeah, it could be, and all the boozers would have been full for most of the day as well. So that always helps, doesn't it? But what I was thinking in the Brown over Adebayo question is that because it's at home and because the crowd would be so up for it, the crowd are naturally have a longer relationship with Adebayo, and so if he does something positive, the noise level goes up, the songs come out, and that could add to the atmosphere and help out. You've got to try and play on all these sorts of things as much as possible, I think. Yeah,
I wouldn't disagree with that whatsoever. Barkley to start again?
Yeah, you can't say he did a lot wrong against Aston Villa. The whole team didn't have a lot of the ball, so that's where he's going to shine. But obviously, if you're talking about Mengi being potentially up for it because he's Man United, then surely Barkley is as well because he's Everton through and through.
Yeah, absolutely. Get more of Barkley on the ball. Good things will happen, whether that's in this game or the games to come. Time will tell. So where can we hurt Liverpool? Well, the first place where we can hurt Liverpool is as good as Trent Alexander-Arnold is on the football and everything that he does going forward. There is a reason why Gareth Southgate will not tolerate him at right back, and that is because defensively, I won't go as far as to say he's terrible or anything like that. I don't think he's great, but it is clearly a level below what he is on the ball and his attacking levels. So Chio up against him just feels like an obvious place to exploit them.
You put him against anyone, actually, in any fullback in this country whatsoever, you'd put him up there because you could, even at Villa Park when he had his first run and he showed a clean pair of heels down that wing, there was sort of an audible gasp, wasn't there, from the Villa fans of, he's a bit tasty. And
from Cash as he was trying to cling hold to the vapour that was being left in his wake.
People are forgetting that he's actually a Republic of Ireland international, probably their best performer in the last few internationals anyway. He's got man of the match quite consistently. He's a top talent, top potential. Obviously probably won't be able to fully realise it until the end of the season, like when we look back on how he's done. But everything he's done so far has been an improvement. And he gives Luton an outball, he gives Luton pace, he gives defenders something to think about. And so, that is definitely one area where you'd probably look to try and attack it. But I think it's probably, that's the same everywhere. Every game Luton play, it's such a threat, such a weapon that Luton have, that they've got to try and do that. I think what Villa did was try and nullify that they did quite significantly, but in the one or two chances that he did get to run at the defenders, then they were worried, because it's been the case for time immemorial that defenders don't like players with pace. And he's got it.
Yeah, bags of pace. That's a matchup that we can exploit, particularly as Alexander-Arnold, for all I don't think he's great defensively, he gets zero defensive help from Salah down that side, but that's not what Salah's in the team for. So if we can get Chio on the ball, he's one-on-one down that side. There is no tracking back from the winger. So that's one place where we can exploit. We just discussed Adebayo for Brown, but could it be Townsend for Brown? Because there's no Andy Robertson on the other side. Simicas, and I'm not even going near his first name, Simicas will be the left back. Andy Robertson's out injured. Not as experienced as Robertson, not as good as Robertson. And that could be an area to exploit. Or Chio played against Simicas for Ireland against Greece just recently and had him on toast. So it could be that Chio goes that side and there's another winger on the Alexander-Arnold side.
Yeah, but it's going to come sooner or later, and we hope probably sooner that Andros gets a start for the performances he put in when he's coming off the bench. So, if you put him out there against Simicas, then there's a good chance of that, I think. And maybe the two could swap if they did play, Chio and Townsend, if that was the options. I think what it does, obviously, it gives you a young, exciting player in Chio who'll just run at people with no fear, and it gives you experience with Townsend, who's got the nous to go back and forward as well. He's going to have to do a lot of defending, we know that, but he can whip a ball in as well, and that's going to be useful because you're not going to play through Liverpool, I wouldn't imagine. The strength is going to be get down those wings and get the balls in the box, and the crowd will respond to that, because if you do that, we've spoken about it before, one of the greatest sights is just a winger getting to the byline and crossing it. It's fantastic. If they can do that, then the noise levels go up.
Yeah, that's it. And who knows, Morris might get something, maybe not from Virgil van Dijk, but whoever it is alongside him. I mean, Kanate shouldn't really have played at the weekend. He should have been sent off against Everton. I don't think anyone can argue that. So he's obviously vulnerable. If he's making fouls against 10-man Everton, he's going to make fouls against us. If it's not him, probably be someone like Gomez, perhaps, who hasn't really kicked on from the promise that he showed earlier on in his career. So there's a central defender that Morris might be able to isolate and get some joy from. So we can get at this Liverpool side, but obviously like we've already alluded to, we have to be mighty careful about things the other way. That's just how it is. They're a damn good side. They might not be in the Champions League this season, but I think we can safely say they are Champions League next season. There aren't going to be 4 teams better than them this season. I'm pretty sure of that. Or if there are,
it's one hell of a league if they are. I know. Yeah, I think you're right. They're going to be title challengers. I would imagine by the form they've been showing so far, and you can get out of them. I think 9 goals conceded so far, so they've got goals to give away. It's if you're talking about Morris causing a problem against any of the central defenders, then he can't be as isolated as he was against Villa, because it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think he will be, will he? Will be a little bit further up the pitch. I'm not suggesting that we'll be going gun-ho or anything like that. We might have to weather a 10 or 15 minute storm in much the same way we did against Tottenham. But once we've weathered that, I think we will play on the fact that we're at home, and we will look to try and play here. And if they go a couple of goals ahead while they're on the road, they might then take their foot off the gas, and it stays respectable in that way rather than the normal way that it would stay respectable. But
I thought you were going to say if a couple goes at, they could score a couple of goals, and we just do a Forest and get 2 back.
That would be nice.
And then you went incredibly sensible. Well done.
Yeah, no, that would be nice, but I don't think they've got Joe Worrell on the bench, so unfortunately. The other way we can win this game, turn the VAR cameras off. Just turn them off, because we don't need. Since that Liverpool goal that should have been given against Tottenham, I've had this thing in my head that they're going to get everything on VAR, and I've just mentioned Konate should have been sent off the following week against Everton, and he wasn't, and it might just be me and my sort of theories, but
conspiracy theories.
That's the word I was looking for. Conspiracy.
You left out the vital word there.
But just turn them off, or do we keep them on? Because
they don't bloody work anyway when they're on.
Well, that's true. But if we keep
them behind a post, it's like everybody else's view at Kenilworth Road, and let's not have a good view to draw a line with.
Well, if we keep them on and we're mugged off by VAR, I'm sure Jurgen will give us a replay, and everyone will be happy, won't they? Or not, as the case may be. Great game in store. Listen, there's nothing to fear here. Yes, there is plenty to fear, but in terms of the overall meaning of this game, there's nothing to fear. This is a game to go out and enjoy. Give it a go. Don't be stupid about it or anything like that. Have your game plan, play to your game plan, but be positive about this game and see what happens. Because you got to say to Liverpool, if you try and stop Liverpool for 90 minutes, they're too good. Somewhere along the line, they're going to break you. So you got to try and get them before they do, really, haven't you? I mean, this is the way you play these teams. Generally, the teams that sit back on this lot, you might frustrate them for half an hour, 45 minutes, even an hour, but eventually that quality will tell. And you've got to try and hurt them beforehand. And, look, Rob's managed however long he's managed now for days like this, and I'm sure he'll come up with a good go. We'll be right up for this in the stands. I can't wait for it. There's plenty of games this season that I can't wait for. Like you said right at the start of the podcast, this was one that jumped off the page. The fact that next week follows it as well, what a brilliant time to be a Luton fan. It's been a brilliant time to be a Luton fan for a long time anyway, but particularly this fortnight. You're playing the 2 biggest clubs in England, I think it's fair to say, back to back. And can't wait. Score predictions. It's where it gets a bit interesting, isn't it? Are you positive, or are you negative, or are you realistic?
Well, I'm a realist, obviously. I'm
not sure you were realistic when you said 4-3 against Notts Forest the other week, but
that was a puncher's chance one, really, because I hadn't got a sniff of getting any right before then or since, actually. But it was just a bit of fun, wasn't it? But realistically, I know you'll come out with you can't bring yourself to predict the Luton defeat, so I'll be the one that takes the slings and arrows in this one. But I think it would be a defeat, and but if they can keep it respectable like they did at Villa Park, a 3-1 would be a decent result. So I'll go for that one again.
They're only 2-2-1 this season away from home, Liverpool. That's 2 wins, 2 draws, and a defeat. Okay, yes, I'm sure every Liverpool fan in our comments will point out to me that the defeat was against Tottenham, where they would have gone 1-0 up, but for VAR, blah, 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 blah. But they drew with Chelsea, which was the game before we went to Chelsea, and they were, time where Chelsea were terrible. For 45 minutes against Wolves, they were bang average, but turned it round to their credit to win 3-1. They drew 2-2 at Brighton, but Pedro missed an absolute sitter of all sitters to win that game. What I'm trying to say is they're not as good away from home as they are at home, but that's fine. There aren't many teams who are as good away from home as they are at home, so you wouldn't expect them to be. Hopefully Kenilworth Road, this can be the real the first time that Kenilworth Road makes a real difference. The last time Liverpool came here, they drew 1-1. They'll toddle off back on their bus with a 1-1 draw on Sunday afternoon.
Well, that would be magnificent if they do. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good. It's going to be a good afternoon, whatever. I think, yeah, you've got to enjoy it. I think it's all set up to be under the lights, get a few pints in, yeah. This is what you've got. You've got to enjoy this.
10 years ago, the only part of Merseyside football that Luton Town could even dream of playing was Southport.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? It's absolutely mad.
You know, we opened our conference winning season at Southport 10 seasons ago, and we lost. 10 years later, we're hosting, if you want to call them the biggest or the second biggest club in the country, team that's won more European Cups than any other team in this country. You know, whether you're our age in 40s, whether you're young in your sort of 20s or even younger than that, or even you're older than us, Liverpool are one of the great football clubs of this country. And if you can't enjoy seeing our team going up against them, whatever happens, then what's the point, really? You know, 10 years ago, as I say, this was absolute pipe dream. So let's have a go and see what happens. And hopefully we're talking about the post-match review, which will be out later, once again, because this game is on a Sunday. We won't be able to record on a Sunday. So the review podcast will probably be out on Tuesday next week. So just keep your eye out for that. But hopefully we're discussing plenty of positives and one of those famous afternoons at Kenilworth Road.
But that's what football's all about, isn't it? You've got to have the hope to go into it. But it's one of these, isn't it? And I know we've said before that we don't like using the word free hit, but you're not expected to get anything out of this. So if it doesn't happen, then nobody's going to be crying, are they? But as long as it's not a massive thumping, that's what you've got to avoid.
And even if it is a massive thumping, and it could be, they're that good. Even if it is a massive thumping, it will be because they're that good. There's no white towel coming out. There's no throwing anything in. We don't do that. We'll give it everything we've got until the very end. But there's levels, and hopefully they don't show themselves. Hopefully they're off it. We're bang on it. And the gap between the two kind of lessens. There's a reason why sport is played out on grass or whatever surface it's played out on and not on a computer screen, because you just don't know. And that's why we're going there on Sunday, just to see if our boys can pull off what would be a fantastic result, even if it's a draw. Brilliant result for us. And
well, that's why it's on telly, isn't it? Because even the Sky Sports can recognise that if something happens there, that's a massive upset.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it then for this episode of the podcast. Please take it easy on us, Liverpool. Our thanks, as always, to the Hightown Club for hosting this episode of the podcast, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our brilliant intro music, which gets my hairs raised on the back of my neck every single time I hear it, because Wembley is still such a recent memory that I'll never, ever forget. To Ed Smith Creative for all of our design sets and everything else. And thank you to you for watching or listening. Please do keep your comments coming in. Give us your score predictions. If any of you get it right, we'll give you a shout out, unless it's some stupid one like Liverpool 7, Luton 0, in which case we'll ignore those completely, even if it's right. And subscribe so that you've got notifications when that review podcast drops. But until that review podcast, come on, you atters, we can do this.
This town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.